Great Scott! Today we are talking about the legacy of Back to the Future. Get ready to blast off into the world of entertainment with Pop Culture Planet. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Pop Culture Planet. I'm your host, Kristen Maldonado, and each week we are joined by incredible experts for analytical pop culture discussions. In this episode, I am thrilled to be joined by Cris Parker of C3 Films and Dave Lee of Dave Lee Down Under. How are you guys doing?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, thank you.
I'm so glad you guys could join.
Of course. I want to talk about my favorite franchise of all time, man.
Yes, Marty McFly's with me.
I love that we all got our gear. We've all got our gear. We are ready. Yeah, I know you guys are huge Back to the Future fans, so I was like, this is going to be the perfect trio to dive into the legacy of this franchise. But before we get started, I love to dive into everyone's sort of like entertainment origins. How did you get started in content creation, in pop culture? Where did your love of that come from? So, Dave, you want to start us off and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I don't know. I think it's probably the same for most of us. It's like such a deep-seated thing when we're young, just growing up with these fantastic movies like Back to the Future that really help shape your understanding of film and pop culture and just great storytelling. And I think for me, that's like the key for why I love films, and that's stories and telling stories. And that's, I think, really why I've got into doing what I'm doing now. I've just always wanted to write stories, tell stories in a visual medium. I love the visual medium. And whether that's making movies or sitting here talking about movies, and that's kind of just what I've always wanted to do. And, over my years, I've tried various things to try and, get into any, kind of industry or anything. And this YouTube thing just kind of happened. And I think that happens for a lot of us. It starts as like as a hobby, something to have a lot of fun with. And then you start building community and start connecting with people, and it spitballs into something completely different. So I'm very excited to be here to talk about one of my favorite film series of all time.
Oh, I'm so glad. And you've been on such a great journey on YouTube. Do you have like a favorite video that you've done on your channel so far?
It's hard because they're all your babies, really. Depending on how long you've spent on some of them. Some of them you might spend like an hour on, and they get more views than something that you've spent 3 weeks on. But I do a series called Cartoon Evolution, which is a series where I explore the histories of cartoon. Thanks, Cris. I explore the history of cartoon characters, classic animation, all that stuff. I did one on Bugs Bunny, which got over 1 million views, which is my highest viewed video ever. That's probably my baby. I love that one, and I owe a lot to that Bugs Bunny video. So there's a lot of stuff that I've done, but that's probably up there.
That's awesome. So what about you, Cris? How did you get started, and where'd your love of pop culture come from?
Yeah, I mean, like Dave was saying, it starts when you're a kid. For me, it was more with Jim Carrey. Just seeing how crazy and fun he was on screen just made me like want to be that type of person, wanted to be that funny man. And as you get older, you realize how difficult it is to actually be an actor, especially someone like Jim Carrey. So you start going through the ranks down of like, all right, I guess maybe I could be a director, or like, oh, that's just as hard as well. Maybe I can write something. Oh, that takes a lot of creativity. And it just went down the ranks until I was like, I guess I'll be a guy on YouTube who talks about it. And luckily enough, it's worked out. But like, I still have those bigger dreams of hopefully doing something bigger, but still just here meeting great people like you guys who just love movies and talking about this stuff makes it all worth it.
Absolutely. Now, what about you? Do you have a favorite movie franchise that you love to cover on your channel?
So I do like a lot of news-based stuff. The stuff I guess I get more excited about the horror news. Like right now we have Scream 5 coming up, and I'm a big fan of the Scream franchise. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. I wish I could one day talk about some sort of sequel or something back in the future, but I'm sure we'll get into that later.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there's some people out there that might want to come after you for that.
Exactly.
Too funny. But speaking of Back to the Future, that is what we are talking about today. Yesterday was the 35th anniversary, 35 years of this movie, and it's still going strong. There are, people still as Marty and Doc. You know, there's TV shows that are inspired by them, like Rick and Morty. You know, just I'm sure, like, who would have even guessed that, like, when this movie was first coming out, that 35 years later, people would still be like as obsessed with it as they are. So my question for you guys is, why do you think the Back to the Future trilogy is so beloved?
It's just one of those, just a great stereotypical story. You know, it's the hero's journey that people just connect with on just such a primal, deep-seated level. It's this great story that has not only science fiction elements, but it has great heart, great soul, fantastic characters that we can all connect to, and adventures that we all just want to go off on. And it's a series that has remained timeless, really. It's just one of those lightning in a bottle things that has just remained so relevant over the years. And whether that has to do with the whole time traveling aspect and everything, I just think it's just one of those, again, just lightning in a bottle things that has just managed to transcend time and the people keep going back to.
Yeah, like to jump off from what Dave is saying, you talk about all the times movies you like, and there's always like a checklist people go off of. You know, the acting was good, the story was cool, the scoring, and every now and then you'll be like, acting was good, score was a little meh, and the story could have been better. Like Back to the Future just hit all the check marks to a high note. Like the music is amazing, the characters like Marty McFly, and just that story of being able to go back and interact with your parents and having this debacle to fix things, the relationship between him and Doc Brown, like it really is so timeless and can be attributed to other movies. So I think Back to the Future is something that'll always stay with us. I'm curious to see how it ages. 35 years and it's still amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you guys said, the music, not even just like the soundtrack, but the score, like everything. And I love how there's just something about this franchise that's like the way that they scripted it out. It's so formulaic, but in a way that doesn't feel like, oh, this is repetitive. We've seen this 100 times. It feels like yes, this is familiar. I'm reliving my childhood again. You know, you get to like the second movie and it's like we're seeing similar things, but it just makes you feel like, you know, like it's just more familiar and fun, like a little safety blanket of like, oh look, there's the manure, there's the, you know, there's the skateboard or the hoverboard, you know, like those moments where they repeat in just such a like classic way. I love it.
It's that real George Lucas thing, isn't it? Where it's like, it rhymes. You know, George Lucas always used to say about Star Wars, it's, you know, it rhymes. His two trilogies, you know, each of the movies, they carry across all these elements that just keep repeating themselves. And it's that repetition and that familiarity that just makes it so easy to connect to.
And it fits even better with Back to the Future because it's a movie about time, and you have that phrase that people say, you know, history repeats itself, and you literally see that through the different time periods that Marty goes through, where he repeats his actions, but in an updated or an old fashion.
Yeah. Well, you've essentially got the same movie 3 times, really, just set in a different time. But it's just so incredible. It's something so simple, but something just so incredibly smart and intricate as well at the same time.
It kind of is diving into these ideas that I think everyone thinks about, like, what was my family like when they were young? Like, what were my parents like? Would we have been friends? Or what are my kids going to be like? You know, and these are like simple questions that I think people just, you know, might think about fleetingly. But then it's like, if you make a whole movie franchise around it, it's like, oh, wow. And, you know, even in the third movie, you know, you dive back into the ancestors, you know, like, and I think there's something very relatable about, like, you know, you're kind of diving into this family tree and kind of going through time, seeing the past and the future in a way that I think everybody kind of thinks about.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious, do you guys remember the first times you saw the film and, you know, why it became your favorite?
For me, sorry, Dave.
You're right.
The first time I remember, I was a kid and I grew up in a Hispanic household. So I actually saw it popping up on a Hispanic channel, the trailer for it. You know, they have like a rerun of like this weekend, catch our premiere of Back to, and, you know, I'd never heard of it, never seen it. And I'm sitting on the couch and I'm so glued to the TV, and my dad's cooking TV on the side. And he's like, you never seen Back to the Future? And I'm like, I'm your son. I haven't seen anything unless you've shown it to me. And so that, before waiting for it to premiere on TV, we just went to Blockbuster that same day, rented the movies, and then throughout the course of the next couple of days, I saw the trilogy and absolutely fell in love with it.
What about you, Dave?
I couldn't even tell you how old I was. I had to have been 7, 8 years old probably when I first discovered it. And I remember we had the VHS box set. And now my dad we never really bought VHS. It was always you'd go to Blockbuster and you'd rent the movies, or my grandmother had a huge VHS library. You'd go and you'd borrow something. But we actually had a copy of Back to the Future on video. And I think he must have brought it home from work, because my dad's a photographer and he used to do a lot of stuff for like advertising and stuff. I'm sure it was a product that he'd shot. Back in those days, you're allowed to bring the product home. And it's just one of those things which is like, oh yeah, same sort of thing. You've never seen this, so let's watch it. And I remember just sort of watching them all in a row and just being so engrossed to the television. And it was just one of those things that just instantly clicks. And, there's, a series of movies that stick with you your whole life that you just watch over and over and over again. And this is just one of those series of films for me. It was just instant clicked. I just fell in love with it, instantly. And still love it now, however many years later.
Yeah, I love that it's kind of like all of our dads introduced us to these movies. My dad is also a big nerd, and we grew up collecting comic books and things like that. So I don't remember the exact time that I watched it for the first time, but I just feel like it was something that was always in our like homes and in our lives. Like, me and my dad have like a big collection of Back to the Future memorabilia. This is just my little bit that's in my apartment, but like at my house, I got like a whole bunch of, a whole bunch of stuff, and, books about like how they put the project together and everything. But like, I just remember that it was a movie that, there's just so many iconic moments in it. Mm-hmm. And like, when I finally got a chance, when it was like 2015 and they were doing the the special anniversary of like where they went to in the second movie, me and my dad went to the movie theaters to go watch that, and it was like unbelievable to watch it like around people. And it's like, I'd seen the movie so many times, but like to just be in a group of people that all love this movie and are watching it together, it felt like we were watching it for the first time. Like everyone's reactions were bigger, and I was like, I'm sure we've all seen this a million times, but something about it that like it felt like you were watching it for the first time. So it's just one of those movies that I think like is just, like you guys said, it's timeless.
Yeah, and like what Dave said, where you were like, your parents didn't even buy VHS tapes, but they had Back to the Future. Yeah. Same sort of situation with me. It's like I have one addiction, and that's Funko Pops. So I try not to spend money on anything else. And so like physical media, I don't really buy Blu-rays or DVDs. But recently, with the new release of the Back to the Future set, I had to go out and get it just to own that copy, because no matter what, I want to always be able to watch that.
Well, I've got... this is my collection of Back to the Future there. However many box sets. I couldn't find the VHS, but we got the original DVDs, the special edition DVDs, the Blu-ray, special edition Blu-ray. I'm waiting for the 4K to arrive.
Oh, okay.
That got delayed here in Australia, so I'm waiting for that one to come through. But it's just it's one of those movies that there's not many movies that I will buy over and over and over again, but that's one that I just... every time there's a new version, I have to get it. You have
to.
And they do stuff for it too, the flux capacitors. Like you have to, because like, how cool is that?
That is awesome.
Now when we I kind of mentioned a little bit the 2015 anniversary. So did you guys, do you remember like where you were, what you were doing when that like kind of big, I feel like that's like one of the first times that like, a Back to the Future moment kind of happened in our like adult lives where you could remember it better. Like, do you remember like what was going on then? And like, do you remember like looking back at like Back to the Future 2 and seeing like, how does it like kind of, how did it hold up compared to like where we are now or where we were then in 2015?
I guess like one of the things, like, because I remember when that happened. It's like it's Back to the Future Day. It's finally, from now on, we are going past Back to the Future, and the future trilogy is all in the past now. And that was just crazy to think about, because literally my whole life since I saw these movies as a kid, I still saw Marty's future as the future, the flying cars, the big holographic 3D stuff. And one thing that kind of like gets to me is like some kids today that will discover Back to the Future that I think will still love it. but they don't realize how much that second movie predicted right about the future in 2016 with like flat screen TVs or the VR headsets. Like all of that is like obvious and in our time. So we think no big deal. But back in the 80s, when they predicted that stuff, that was mind boggling. And to have that all come to fruition, even the Nike shoes that they actually released out that I can never own because they're just so expensive, but I want them so bad. It's crazy. But I remember just like I just can't believe we're actually past Back to the Future.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you mentioned the Nike shoes got made recently. You got to look at these movies as almost like, people kind of our age are the people who are running technology and building technology and stuff. And these movies inspired them. So you look back at movies like Back to the Future, you look back at movies like Star Wars and so many things now, droids and robots and stuff, running factories and stuff. And it all spawns from these ideas from these movies and inspired people to, how can we make this happen in real life? So I feel like in that respect, this movie maybe doesn't get as much respect that it probably should in helping people to, let's make big flats. Why can't we do that? There's technology to do that sort of thing. Back to Future Day, I remember being in London at the time and walking around sort of, I think it was Leicester Square. They've got a big cinema there. And they had the DeLorean, and they had a guy dressed as Doc and Marty, and they were like pretending like, "Oh, we've landed in the picture." It's amazing. It's so good how you get a picture with them. But it was just a really surreal moment, and it's almost like there's some things that we still don't have hoverboards, the proper hoverboards that you can ride around and the street with and stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that it really did predict or that inspired people to create the things. That it was this really weird cross section of pop culture and history and the now and just one of those very strange things. But then I also wonder of kids or the growing generations now whether they're going to look back at that movie and think it's so dated. Like you look back at movies like Blade Runner or 2001: A Space Odyssey or things like that predicted all these crazy wild things. I watched one of the Universal Monsters movies that were made in the 40s recently that was set in the 1990s. And, they're still dressed like guys from the 40s. And it was, so I don't know. I feel like it's probably aged better than some of that stuff, but I do kind of wonder how people will look back at it.
Yeah, that is a good question. What do you think, Chris?
Well, that's what when we'll come to that, talking about, if they can expand the universe or do more with it, is my figures just don't seem to stay up. It's because I have my laptop hitting it. But I think because there could be things you can explain, even in the Back to the Future lore where they're messing with time. So they say not everything is set. That's how I will explain it to my kids when it's like, well, how come 2015 didn't look like that, Dad, or anything? It's just like, well, they mess with time, so we don't get flying cars or we don't get the floating hoverboards. But like, there was even shots in there like they had the police using drones to take pictures. There's one shot where they take a picture of evil Biff in the future, and I'm like, we actually have drones now that do that kind of stuff, and a kid won't appreciate that was like a big unimaginary thing that was possible, and now it's just like, oh, that's real. I don't know if that's that exciting.
Yeah, that is a good point. So going off of that, do you guys think that there needs to be a future sequel or reboot, or do you think it's kind of like, this is a time capsule, leave it as it is? I'm curious.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. Geez. I'm gonna get. I don't know. I feel like I don't have a huge issue with reboots and sequels that are made 20 years later or revivals or whatever. I think it's a natural progression of storytelling that we retell stories over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But Back to the Future is one of the ones where I always feel like I don't know if I want another one. It's just one of those things that's just so packaged so beautifully and has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's just it's like one of those things that you don't want to see reopened. And, they talk about like even like TV shows that we've all grown up with. Like one of my favorite series ever is Friends. And I think those 10 series, it's about this, period, this one period in these people's lives. I don't need to know what happens after this, 10-year sort of bubble of their life. And I kind of feel the same way Back to the Future. If they did another one, I'm not going to be angry or anything like that. I'd be like, all right, here we go. I'll probably be very excited. But I always feel like that's like the one thing that I feel like doesn't doesn't need it, especially so soon. 30 odd years later, but it still feels like it's. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those weird ones.
It feels like every 6 months we have Bob Gale, one of the creators of it, always say it'll never happen. No part 4, no reboot, no remake. Mm-hmm. And I really do respect his decision to do that because, like you said, it's such a perfect thing to like even attempt to do it would be messing that up, and I completely get that. I just would love to see that world again. I don't. There's not many franchises that just bring so much joy and comfort like Back to the Future, and I don't necessarily want like a remake or them trying to do a new Marty McFly, like make it like Tom Holland as Marty McFly or something like that, and have another person play Doc Brown. Like I don't want that. I would just want a continuation of that world where someone finds the DeLorean or someone stumbles upon that story, and you can have, legacy characters like Marty or Doc Brown pop up in there. I would just like to see another story in that world. It doesn't necessarily have to connect to Marty McFly and Doc Brown because I feel like their chapters are over, but just something there about time traveling, messing something up, having to fix it, the aesthetic behind the movie, just all the colors and everything that they could do. I would love to see that happen.
Yeah.
You've got me excited now, Chris. You got me wanting this. But I feel that's kind of like how I felt about Star Wars. I feel like Star Wars is another one of the big ones for me. And after 6 episodes, it was like, that's it. There's no more story. Nothing else is happening. And then episode 7 came out. It was like, oh my God, we're back in this world. New stories, new characters. Trilogy got a little bit, not very great.
That's always the example people throw at me when I say, oh, really? You wanted them to do what they did to Star Wars? And I'm like, I get it. I understand.
No, I think that would be a good way to do it. You jump back into that world, new characters, but there's so many possibilities you could go now. I mean, looking into the year 3000, like what crazy things, the kind of, the evolution of technology in the last 30 years is crazy. What are we going to have, in the year 3000? I think that'd be exciting to kind of explore.
Yeah, sure. And I think now versus living in the 80s is very different. So to go from present day to like some future time or some past time it's going to be a very different story, which could be entertaining to watch. But I'm also with you guys on like, I'd be mixed about it because I know Bob Gale doesn't want to do another story. So I'm like, don't do it. Like they're doing a musical, like I think there's other ways to bring these projects to life again. And I would love to go to the West End and watch the Back to the Future musical that they're doing, or have that come to Broadway or something. But also but then you look at all these different projects that they try to bring back. So Jumanji, I thought that was actually a really successful one. That I was like, what are you trying to do? And then they did it, and I was like, this is amazing. Like I love it. But then there's other times where I don't know, like Charmed, for instance, where they try to bring it back and people are so against it that it kind of like taints everything because you're just like, can't you let people have fun? It's like I don't want them to mess with the world. So I like your idea, Chris, of like maybe doing different people in this world.
I literally think about it like almost once a month where it's just like, I just want to know that Marty's okay in the future. Like, I don't want them to like go ahead and give us a whole movie based on what he's doing. But like, let's say there was a kid who went in the future and he like goes to a rock concert and Marty's playing because that was his dream to be a rock star. Like just like a little hint to that. It's like, oh, they're fine. They're good. But now we're watching this other adventure, like, I don't know, something like that. Or
if it's like Marty's grandkids or something, or
like
where he doesn't have to be in it, but there's like a connection. But again, also I think you have to have the right actors for.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it just feels like Mean Girls 2. That felt like what is this? Like I feel like you need to have like the right caliber of actors to like bring something like another version of this story to life. So, but I'm with you guys. I don't mind reboots and remakes and things, but this is the one project that I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Really.
And I hate to say, I really do think in our lifetime we are going to get it because I hate to be this crude, but like he always says, as long as I'm alive, it's not going to happen. Yeah. We've seen when people pass away and the rights go to their estate, they have no problem licensing it out or anything like that. And so when we're 40 or 50, we're finally going to get that reboot.
It's going to happen. I remember thinking,
we'll be ready.
I remember thinking as a kid, I wonder one day if they'll remake Star Wars. And, they essentially did that with the new trilogy, or, Force Awakens is so much the same as A New Hope. It used that same formula. But I feel like, Back to the Future is one of those things. At some point, it's inevitably going to happen, for sure.
Yeah.
I
know. Well, I mean, Bob Gale Bob Gale in the interview says that Universal is like constantly always asking, like every time they're like, hey, we have a pitch ready, or you want to hear it? And he's like, no, thank you. I wonder if he listens to any of them out of curiosity. Maybe one day he'll hear one that's like, you know what, fine.
Just do it. Yeah.
I know, but we'll have a riot on our hands.
Too funny. I want to bring up a couple of quick comments. We've got Adam Daly saying, I remember the Chicago Cubs almost won the World Series in 2015, like they predicted in Back to the Future 2. They did win in 2016, so close. So that was cool. And then in terms of casting, potential future Back to the Future, he also says, if they do it, just don't cast Tom Holland. He's kind of over it.
Yeah. Honestly, if they do it, it'll probably be a female character this time around, which I think is probably fine. Yeah.
So fun. I would love that. And then we also have a comment from Oyrich Entertainment who says, this is like the ultimate collab. How did I miss it? You didn't miss anything.
Still going.
Yeah. And this person also says, I don't think they should make a sequel, rather a full-on reboot so they don't ruin the original. Yeah.
Yeah. That's smart.
Wait, I love that comment too. Daniel says, and they said Endgame is the most ambitious crossover. It is. We also have actually some fun Back to the Future questions coming in. Owner says, who's your favorite character other than Marty? Who's your favorite character, guys, other than Marty?
It'd be cliche if we said Marty. So, you know what? I really liked. Why am I blanking on his name right now? That's so bad. Back to Marty's dad. What's his dad's name? Why can't think of it right now? George McFly. Yeah. I loved him in the first movie. I hate that they did go ahead and replace him, but he just has a great arc in that first film. And one of my favorite moments is when he finally knocks out Biff. That still gives me goosebumps watching that scene. I like that.
Did you hear of the story of why they had to replace him?
I don't know the exact story. What was it?
It's something like he was asking for like insane amounts of money, and that he also was like changing a lot of things and like was trying to play the role in like a different way than they wanted, and so he was already kind of difficult to work with. And then and then he was asking for this insane amount of money that they were like, okay, but like you're part of the film, but you're not like the star of the film. So like, and then he got upset about it, and I think he tried to sue them after the fact because they did try to like fake that.
They used a life mask.
They didn't show him, and so and then he ended up suing them, and but they didn't have him come back. So I heard they said apparently he was kind of difficult to work with in this book that I have about the film. Wow. Yeah. But what about you, Dave? Who's your favorite character?
Is it stereotypical to say Doc Brown? I always loved Doc Brown. Just something just so fun and quirky, just that really energetic, crazy personality. It's just something that I always really connected with. And like you said, Chris, it's that Jim Carrey sort of just crazy thing that really drew me. I'm a huge fan of comedy. I'm a huge fan of Jim Carrey and Steve Martin, Robin Williams, they're like my idols growing up. And I think Doc Brown was really another one of them for me too. It's like, I aspire to be this just crazy, weird old man, I always loved him. I actually, Christopher Lloyd came to Melbourne for one of the like big Comic Con things that we had. And it was really badly organized, where today you can when they come and they do their appearances, you can go online and you buy your ticket to see him, you get a time to go and see him, whatever. Awfully organized. It's like one of the first ones we ever had here. And I was waiting in line for like 3 hours just to get a ticket. Man. You had to go there, wait in line, get a ticket, then wait in line again and get a photo. I was in line for like 3 hours. Line hadn't moved. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not waiting any longer. He had like a Q&A session as well. I thought, I'm going to leave the line. I'm going to go see the Q&A session. At least I can see him. And I was very excited about that. I didn't get to meet him, didn't get my photo, but I got to see him in person do a Q&A, which was good enough.
The same air as him. So
love Doc Brown.
Awesome. I would say maybe mine is Biff, because I feel like he plays a very based off the book I had read about it, he was so nice and then yet he plays this character that's so opposite of him. And so I feel like you have to be like such a good actor to be able to do that, he really, brought this like energy of like, this guy's to hear like that behind the scenes so nice and everyone like loves him. I think he probably also has like maybe one of the more fun roles, because he gets to do all these things like
it's a great villain of the whole trilogy.
Yeah, he gets to do a lot of really good, like a lot of really fun evil things. So we also got a question from Ashley Martinez who says, what Back to the Future movie would you want to live in?
Oh, are we living in Back to the Future 2?
Yeah. I guess 2 would be best because you get to go also to the 50s and the future and a little bit of the 80s.
Yeah. I can't pick. You couldn't pick. Just the whole thing, just being able to travel around is crazy. I'd love to go to the Old West, like awful times to live in, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But to be there and just, I don't know. I love Westerns. So I love 50s culture. I don't know. I just, all of it.
I feel like the first movie is maybe a little bit safer since we're already living in the second movie. And another question from James Matthew who says, what vehicle would you want to turn into a time machine? Maybe a boat. I think I had read also that they were originally going to use
a Ford, I think.
Or I thought I heard also a refrigerator was an idea.
The alternate. That's a crazy thing that it just discovered.
I read that they were like, we don't want to encourage little kids to like go in their refrigerators.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's not.
That's smart. Yeah. Man, what vehicle would we turn into today? I'm trying to think, what futuristic vehicles do we have now that didn't exist back then? I mean,
it'd be some like supersonic jet or something, surely, wouldn't it? Something like that,
Tesla or something.
Tesla, yeah. I would.
Yeah.
I'll go with the Cybertruck. Yeah, it looks like a DeLorean.
You need like a cool car like that. I think that's why the DeLorean is so iconic because it like sort of has that weird space like quality with the doors opening on the side. Like I always thought it was so
I dream
cool.
of owning one day. I would love to. But I hear they're horrible cars actually.
Yeah, they're awful. They didn't make many of them. They were built so cheaply. They looked futuristic. Oh, so good. But no, apparently they were awful. Yeah.
It's too funny. Now, my question for you guys is, how would you rank all three films?
Oh man,
it's a tough one.
I don't know. I think I always enjoyed the second one maybe the most, but then again, whenever I visit them, I always tend to watch them like back to back. It's like just do a massive marathon. It's almost like like small pieces of the same puzzle. And I know the first film was originally made to be a standalone movie. That stinger at the end, to be continued, was just a gag. Just a throwaway gag, But the movie was so huge that they were like, let's go back and let's actually do it. So I feel like in that respect, then they shot, 2 and 3 back to back. But I feel like they did it so perfectly that it really is just all part of this one organic story. I find it really hard to disconnect them, especially in the way that they travel back to the first film. And then I think that's what I loved so much about the second movie as a kid. I was just so fascinated by how they could travel back to the first movie. It's not so much about, we're traveling back in time. It was like, they've gone back into the first movie. Like, how on earth did they do that? That's so cool. Yeah. I don't know. For me, I can't pick one. I think I'd have to go. It's just 1, 2, and 3. It's just that good. Like the one I rewatched the most is the first. I do have a lot of fun with the second one, and I remember even as a kid, I hate myself for thinking that. But like, if you remember, I think even now, if you watch it on DVD or Blu-ray, like when the second movie ends, it immediately shows you a trailer or a little like teaser for the third one. I remember being a kid excited, like, there's a third movie, and then seeing those like 30 seconds of what it's about, and it's a Western. And I remember grinning getting all like, it's a Western? What? But over time, I've grown to really love the third one to where I don't care if it's set in old times and like that. But I'll still go 1, 2, and 3. But all of them are great movies. It doesn't mean 3 is bad at all.
Yeah,
I think I felt the same as a kid too. Actually, the third one, I didn't have that much connection because I didn't really like the Western thing. more I've grown, the more I've experienced cinema, and I love Western films now. So I connect with that a lot more than I used to.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I agree with that. I think the third movie is one that I always like. I forget that I like it, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, but I like this. They're all great, you know. But like, I think if I were to rank them, it might be 2, 1, 3, but only because, like you said, with the second movie, I love that you go back to the first one. So it's really like they're all like 1 and 2 are kind of here, and then 3's like right here. You know, like but they're all equally so great. And I feel like every time I rewatch them in a row, I remember like how incredible it is, like you said, just all together. And even though I don't love Westerns, like I'm like, I forget that. And I'm just like, this is so good. Like I forgot how amazing this is.
It has some of the best action scenes in like some of the most exciting, most exhilarating, sequences of the trilogy, I think. And you do forget that. Yeah. And you forget how so many of the really great moments. And, they riff on things from the previous movies. He's playing like the duck shoot game. He's shooting down like pink ducks. That throws back to, the second film where he's playing on the arcade games and just all the ways they I think it's just a really great riff on the original 2 films. And I think, maybe it does stand apart as its own sort of little thing. But I don't know. I find it hard to disconnect them all, really, myself.
I mean, you made a great point, like all the connections between them. And I think that goes back to like the way that, like those are some of my favorite things in movies, especially in shows and movies when they like connect things and you're like, oh my gosh, like, wait, we're in the West and they're actually building the clock tower that we're going to see that becomes a huge plot point later on, And, the fact that they do replicate certain scenes, like, the chase scene to the manure, to see it in the past, in the present, in the future, and how they do it in all these different ways. It's just like so much fun.
So clever.
Yeah. It's like, man, these people are pretty smart.
It makes it seem like it'd be hard to replicate now to do that.
Oh, for sure.
Because it'd be impossible.
Yeah. You need to like be setting up things that you don't even realize you're setting up. Like they set up these things in the first movie that they didn't even know they were going to make another movie, and then it all works still.
Yeah, but today that would all be mapped out. I mean, they didn't do that with the new Star Wars trilogy. They didn't map it out.
But surprisingly,
I know. Don't get me started on that. But like you look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with Iron Man, they plant the seeds for so many other movies, like 20 odd movies that have happened over the last 10, 11, 12 years, whatever it's been. And to think Back to the Future really did that same sort of thing where there's all these seeds in the first movie, but wasn't planned that way. It was just something that was just
happened.
How do we? Yeah, exactly right. It's a very different way of making movies, but I think in that respect, it really inspired the way movies were made in the future.
Yeah. And I love how, they told the story they wanted to tell the first time, and then they saw how popular it was and then went off and did other things. I feel like sometimes there's projects that people are like, okay, well, we want to tell this story, but in order to do that, first we should do this. And so then they never actually even get to the story they wanted to tell because people didn't care necessarily for this like setup to actually get to what they wanted to do. I feel like I've seen that a bunch with like some TV shows, like there was a show Chambers on Netflix where it was like clear that they were trying to set up for us to go somewhere really crazy, but nobody, it never happened. So I love how they just like told the story they wanted to tell, and it's like, oh wait, people love this. Let's show you more. We can go up, we could go down, we could go to the future, to the past, everywhere.
It's such a weird example though of that too, in that all 3 movies were really good. I mean, you look at even something like Jaws, which was such a huge film, and then they made 4 sequels and they're all trash. Like it's awful. Spielberg didn't want to be involved with them. It was just like you if you want to do them, you go and do them, sort of thing. But Back to the Future is this lightning in a bottle thing where the whole series is just insanely good.
Like, how did lightning strike 3 times?
I know.
It's crazy, but it's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Such a classic. We got a couple more comments coming in. Adam says, can you think of a better franchise that replaced 2 pretty big characters and it still works? I'll wait. Yeah, I mean, they really managed to hold up.
Marvel Cinematic Universe, I guess, with Rhodey and the Hulk. That's about it.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how they try and smooth those things over with the multiverse thing. You just know that's going to happen. Oh yeah, that's why he's a completely different guy in the second movie. Yeah, you just know that's going to happen. But I think that's the danger, maybe that kind of thing. But I think it is strange that you have these two. Again, they replaced Jennifer, they replaced George McFly, but you don't really even realize it. It's not one of those
as a kid. I didn't know.
No. It's a bit different, but she just, I don't know. It's one of these weird things that just works.
But I think those two characters, while they were, part of the story, I feel like they were not. I mean, if they replaced Marty or Doc, it wouldn't have worked. And if they had gone with, they originally had what was his name, Eric Stoltz as Marty, and then they were like, actually now we got Michael J. Fox, we need to replace you, and like, he filmed weeks of work, and I think that the film would not have been the same if they hadn't done that. So imagine, not Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. I don't think that it would have worked.
Yeah, on the Blu-ray or on the 4K they show audition tapes from actors that are now famous at once, and one of them was Ben Stiller, who auditioned for Marty, and you can see his audition tape. And I love Ben Stiller, but it was not coming off the page well.
There is footage of Eric Stoltz.
I've seen it, and it did not work.
It doesn't work at all because Michael J. Fox was their number one. They went after him for ages trying to get him to do it, but because he was doing Family Ties at the time, he just schedule-wise couldn't do it. They got Eric Stoltz. He didn't work, and they went, we need to go back to Michael J. Fox. And they broke this deal with him where he would shoot Family Ties in the afternoon and then go straight from that set to the Back to the Future set and shoot all through the night.
Poor guy.
So that entire first film, crazy. Just insane. And just to think, to get this perfect performance, what they had to do to get it. But oh man, thank you, Michael J. Fox.
For real.
Yeah, seriously.
Can you imagine like an Eric Stoltz doll?
No, it doesn't
What was funny
work.
about that footage with Eric Stoltz too is he didn't even have the same outfit. So like, did Michael J. Fox choose his outfit for Back to the Future, or did they just change it for different actors? Because that's always something I wondered. Because Eric Stoltz was like a very gothic clothing, all black and all that. So that was just something. Because even the way he dresses, I feel is so part of the trilogy also, and goes in line to when he's in the future and he has a future version of his outfit. I just wonder how they choose that.
I think that's probably it. I think it's probably like they dress to suit the actor, or whatever's kind of going on. I know they went through with The Wizard of Oz, the 1939 film. They went through numerous directors, and every director that came on changed Dorothy's outfit to suit their vision for the film. So it could almost be that kind of thing where it's like we've got a different actor. The film's it's going to be almost a different vision. You need to change how he looks. Maybe that's a big part of it. Maybe the original costume just wasn't working. They had to change the character.
Because even in the script, there's jokes about his outfit where they keep calling him a lifeguard or they think it's life preserver. So I'm just like, it's interesting how little things change the script and all that.
Yeah, and I mean the costumes in this are so iconic too. Like you mentioned, like if you take his costume, any of his costumes from the movies, and you put them out in the world, and like this is Back to the Future.
Automatically.
Really, like you guys said, just really great across the board. Music, costumes, casting, story. Just they nailed it all. I don't know how they got it so perfect, but
just one of those
amazing.
Things.
Yeah. So what do you guys think is the overall impact of the trilogy on our culture? Loaded question.
Yeah, that is loaded. I don't know. I always considered Back to the Future to be the ultimate family movie. I'm curious to how Dave will answer this, because I always saw Back to the Future also as like the ultimate American movie for like American life, American audiences, all that. But obviously, Dave, it impacted you a lot. But I just see it as a template for something to be really fun, to something to strive for, because I can't imagine another, even just not even talking about the trilogy, but just the first movie, another movie out there that captures the same fun and adventure, comedy, likable characters, a story that feels formulaic in a good way. I just think it's something that's always been strived to make, but is never really been able to be made again in Hollywood.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, for me, obviously from Australia, I love Americana. As you can see behind me, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn, you know, and I feel like Back to the Future was probably one of the things that spawned this incredible obsession, you know. You know, the red jacket and the jeans, and that really is the Marty McFly thing. James Dean. I love 50s culture, Elvis, and just the idea of like an American diner, and just all. I don't know. I've always had like this amazing connection with Americana, and I feel like it probably does. I haven't thought about this before, but it probably does stem back to my love for Back to the Future, and I feel like that probably has inspired a lot of people in that respect too. And I don't know. I again, it's just stories and characters and things that you can connect with, and whether it is set in America or not, it is just these, you know, universal themes, and that's what makes a movie, you know, such a beloved movie so popular, is that you don't necessarily need to be American to love it or to understand the stories, you know, anything like that. It's just like it's a universal thing. And I think again, that's such a hard thing. That's a really hard thing, especially something that is so rooted in American culture, you know, the iconic 1950s, and then you've got, you know, real 1980s Americana as well. But how that kind of transcends this universal thing is just, it's crazy. I don't know, it continues to baffle me how perfect these films are, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. You know, there's just something about the way that these films are set up that I think, like you guys said, really are templates and inspirations for other projects. You know, the dynamic duo of Marty and Doc, you know, like I said, they recreated that with, you know, Rick and Morty, or, you know, you see all these, you know, projects like 80s projects like Stranger Things, where they like take inspiration from, you know, projects like Back to the Future, and they kind of infuse that into their projects. You know, there's a musical. Like, I think that there's something magical about a project like this, about, you know, a guy on an adventure with his buddy who, you know, that's just like timeless, and that we do try to recreate and bring back and do in different ways. And just want to like keep that legacy, you know, going strong in any form that we can. And it just give you that nostalgia, you know, that kind of like looking back on, you know, your childhood, and, you know, on these, you know, I don't know, just the story of Back to the Future also is very like kind of aspirational. You know, Marty's doing all these things, but also like trying to make a better life for himself and his parents. And like, you know, this is a story of like, he goes back in time, and he like, before he went back, his parents were like kind of unhappy, and then he comes back to the Back to the Future, and his parents are like better off, and they, you know, are successful, and, you know, it's kind of like this like quintessential American dream, but kind of like going to the past to make that happen, and going to the future to like, you know, make all of that happen. It's kind of really cool.
I think there's just something so fascinating for me, just that idea of just one little change can just completely alter everything that happens after. And you can go back in the future and come back, and everything's just completely different. And oh my God, how do we fix this? How do we now? How do we get this reality back to how it was? It just pulls on so many of these just strange things that we all, you know, take for granted now. And you talk about, you know, the impact on other pop culture. You just have to look at the Marvel films, and you hear everyone all the time going, oh, we need, you know, Back to the Future with Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland. Essentially, the relationship that Tony Stark and Peter Parker have in those films is Doc Brown and Marty McFly, crazy old man scientist who takes a young guy under his wing and goes off on these crazy, fantastical adventures. And it goes back again to what I was saying before, that hero's journey idea. It's this same story that's been told for thousands of years in different ways and different forms. And that is why it's so deeply seated in us, and how we connect with that so well, because it's such a familiar thing. But then that inspires everything else that comes after it too, because it does it in such a unique and just incredible way.
Absolutely.
And just like Yeah, like the innocence of it, like how they never even explain how Marty and Doc were friends. But you just automatically bought into this young kid being friends with this mad scientist. But like, I remember that never occurred to me is why these two guys would be friends or why they would hang out. It was never until you really think about it. It's like, well, I would. I wouldn't see myself at 15 hanging out with some older, strange scientist, especially if he has all these weird inventions that never work. But you're watching it back as a kid, or even now, it doesn't occur to you or cross your mind.
No, and I think that just goes to show that, like, Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd had great chemistry as actors. Where like you don't even care; they're friends, and you believe it. And there's other projects that you'll watch, and they like have people as like friends or love interests or whatever, and you're like, I just don't believe this. Even if they set it up, it's like, oh, this is not believable. But these two guys, they have a great dynamic as like this duo. So this has been such a fun conversation, guys. Is there anything else you want to add? Closing thoughts on Back to the Future and its legacy?
I just hope it continues to live on, even if we don't get some sort of continuation, the next generation, because I know we're going to pass it on to our kids and whatnot. I just hope they accept it. That's what my biggest fear is, to show them the movie and they go, you like this? That'd be my biggest fear.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we have crossed all bases. As long as it lives on. And I feel like it will, because it's such a timeless thing, again, like Star Wars, or even like I said before, like The Wizard of Oz, a movie that was made in 1939 and people still love it. It's still like the most viewed film in history because generations keep connecting with it. It's just, again, that's that hero's journey idea. I feel like it will live on, and I don't know, I'm excited to see what the future brings for Back to the Future. I don't know whether we get a sequel or a reboot or whatever. I just hope it does continue to live in some way.
Absolutely. Great points, guys. And I hope so as well. Yeah. Continue just like supporting that Back to the Future fandom, legacy.
Yeah. Yes.
And we'll see what's to come. So thank you guys so much for joining me. You can find all of the information and links to Pop Culture Planet and our guests below. But if you want to follow Dave and Chris, do you guys want to share where they can find you? Dave, you want to start?
Oh, go ahead.
Or Chris?
No, go ahead.
You're right.
You guys can find me at youtube.com/3cfilms or on Twitter at 3cfilmreview. Really appreciate you having me on here to talk one of my favorite movies of all time.
Of course. Thank you. What about you, Dave?
You can find me YouTube at Dave Lee Down Under, on Twitter, on Instagram. Just search me. I'll pop up on all of those. And thanks for having me on. Absolutely loved it. It's been great.
Thank you. Well, you guys can catch new episodes of the show every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. EST. And if you're interested in following the podcast, you can follow me pretty much everywhere at Kmaldo, or the show at Pop Culture Planet Podcast on Instagram, or Pop Cult Planet on Twitter. And if you watch the live video version of Pop Culture Planet on my channel, youtube.com/Kmaldo, you can join in on the conversation in real time and stick around for the Q&A at the end of the show. It's not on the auto podcast, so that's for everyone still listening. If you are on right now, we're going to answer a couple of comments and questions that we didn't get to yet. So feel free to throw your comments and questions in now. Episodes will be available on all of your favorite podcast listening platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. And if you enjoy the episodes, consider subscribing so you know when a new one's posted. Rate and review this podcast and share it with your fellow pop culture lovers. Thanks for listening. It's been a blast, and talk to you next week. So if anyone has any additional comments and questions, I'm going to go back up to a couple that we missed. Let's see.
Dave, do you have any of the posters over there in your studio, the Back to the Future posters? Or
I did have one. I think it's down in the garage at the moment, but I did have one on my wall as a kid, a big framed one.
Yeah. I eventually want to get them, but I run out of wall space.
Yeah, I know.
One day we're trying to get a house soon, and I'm going to have a studio, because right now I'm like in a tiny corner of my bedroom. You don't want to see the mess. That's not just kidding. But I'm in a tiny corner of my bedroom, but I have at my family's house this really cool like 3D Back to the Future poster where if you put on 3D glasses, it kind of like moves around. It's like all colorful. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
But we have another comment from Orich Entertainment, who says the only sequel that they would want from a time travel film would be from Meet the Robinsons, Disney's most overlooked gem. Have you guys checked out that film?
I think I have a small vague memory of it, but yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, that's one of the, I guess, more forgotten films of the more, I guess, the post-Renaissance era. But I watched it for the first time recently, and I thought it was actually really good. I really enjoyed that. I think a sequel would actually work quite well. The characters are really great, just really crazy, zany characters. I think that even if maybe like a TV series or something could work, Disney Plus, or, something like that. But yeah, for sure, I'd like to see more from that world.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't really know too much about Meet the Robinsons, but yeah, if you really enjoy it, then maybe I need to check it out. I haven't dived into that world, the Meet the Robinsons world yet.
Other than Back to the Future, can you guys think of another movie that handled, I guess, time travel in a way that was as fun or entertaining as them? Because like I would think there'd be so many future time traveling movies, but like I can only think of a handful. Like you have your comedy versions, like your Hot Tub Time Machine, but like that isn't really trying to be a Back to the Future or having to have fun in that way. But
I guess maybe a franchise, maybe like Bill and Ted.
Oh yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah.
I think it's like, I would say Bill and Ted, and other than that, I can't think of like another one that I feel like is iconic. I guess like that.
Yeah.
But maybe, it's one of those things that like over time, movies like, I don't know, Happy Death Day will become like the classics for people. I don't know.
Yeah. Cool. Because like with Happy Death Day, that's obviously like something spawned off from Groundhog Day to where you have that type of movie. And that's what I meant. Like, how come there's not more Back to the Future like movies? I would think there'd be so many because there's tons of Groundhog Day like movies with like Happy Death Day and they've made sequels to those, and we're getting more in the future. So I don't know.
I don't know.
Even Bill and Ted, though, I guess like they go back in time, but they go to like the underworld. So it's kind of like they have their own thing that they're doing. Like, that is kind of interesting that there hasn't been as many Back to the Future types of movies. I mean, that's definitely something you could do where it's like, creating a new original franchise or just a new original film in general.
With time travel,
I don't know. I can't think.
I feel like a lot of them are like darker, like Looper type of movies where everything's very serious and not very like fun and like we're gonna time travel and have an adventure.
I don't know. It is weird. I've never really thought about that, but maybe it's just one of those things. People like, don't touch it. Don't do it. It's been done so perfectly.
That's probably why. Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. The only thing I can really think, maybe like Futurama. I don't know. I can't remember that really dealing with time travel that much, but it did kind of flash back and forward. Fry goes back, goes into the future, and then kind of flashes. But that all spawns from Back to the Future. But I don't know. Yeah, I can't really think of too much else, really.
Well, that means there's space for it. Maybe we're overdue.
Sure.
Rich also says, I watched all of Back to the Future for a marathon in October 2015 and have been obsessed ever since. I mean,
good man.
Yeah, awesome.
That's the way to do it.
Also said, I love 2 purely because of how cool and creative I thought they had the future look. Yeah, they did a lot of really cool things with the I love the Jaws coming out.
Yeah.
I even like the car designs. I thought those were look cool.
Yeah. Who didn't want a hoverboard? I still want a hoverboard.
Oh yeah. Same. All I have is this foam one.
I saw you did the video where you picked it up. Oh my god.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh my lord.
And I just remember in the second, like there were, you know how when you're just like watching a movie when you're young, you don't realize certain things. Like I did not realize that Michael J. Fox was playing all of his kids.
Same thing. I never noticed there was a kid either.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
Even Biff in the third one. I didn't know that was the same actor as Biff and all that. Or Marty McFly was his great ancestor there. I did not know that was also being played by Marty. Just stuff like that. It's like, oh, you notice it now as you're older.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the gag with the kid in the cot, and he says, you better get used to these bars.
Yeah. Uncle Joey, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so
brilliant.
funny. And they did a really great job with the makeup too. Like even the old age makeup, like when I was really young, I didn't realize that it was the same actors playing the kids and the parents. And then I was like, whoa.
Well, I always thought Doc Brown was like an old man, like 70, 80-year-old man, but he's not. He's like 40 something, you know?
White hair at a young age.
Yeah. It's just weird how you view these things differently over time. And maybe that's the thing. It's just so there's things you just take for granted as a kid, or you just don't notice, or you know, it's one of those weird things.
Yeah, I recommend going back and watching movies now that you watched when you were young, because there's so many things I didn't pick up on. Like, I don't know if you guys know Steffi from In My Humble Opinion, but she has a podcast called Diva Dailies where you dissect like divas of film and TV. And I did like a whole bunch of episodes with her, like back to school divas, like Clueless and Mean Girls and what is it called? Bring It On. And there were so many things that had gone over my head when I was little that I did not get watching these movies. Like basically the entire plot of Bring It On. Didn't understand that it was all about cultural appropriation until this year. And I was like, whoa, my mind is blown. I really didn't think what was happening when I was young in movies.
Like even looking back at like cartoons and stuff we grew up with, like the Rugrats and stuff. You look back at the Rugrats and some of the comedy that they got away with in this show for kids is crazy. And you can find compilations on YouTube of like adult jokes, and it's like, what the hell?
It's crazy.
Like my mum would always say that when I was a kid, she'd be like cooking dinner or whatever while I was watching the Rugrats, and she said that she just listened to it and it was just find it so funny, just all these real adult jokes. And obviously you don't pick up on it when you're like 4 or 5 years old. But it's so funny to go back.
Parents who are forced to watch with their kids.
Yep, exactly.
Even like The Simpsons. Like I was watching that, well into my late teens. I loved this. It was always on. But you go back to some of it now and you go, oh, wow. I never picked up on that joke, sort of thing. It's like some real, like, layered stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Got a couple more comments that I'll address and then we'll wrap up. Another comment from Archie says, who should direct another Back to the Future?
Ooh. That's hard.
That is really hard.
I don't know. It's tough.
Man, that is a tough one.
I feel like I would maybe want someone like in the vein of like David F. Sandberg, who did Shazam. Just because I thought that movie was really fun.
He's really good with fun. Yeah,
I liked how they kind of took this concept of superheroes that we all know, but they did something a bit different, showing like this is what a kid would really do if they had superpowers. They'd, make YouTube videos, they'd like panhandle, they'd do goofy things. And I feel like that energy could maybe be fun to bring to something like a Back to the Future.
That's a good pick. Yeah. I would go with Edgar Wright because I love how he uses music. And like we were talking about, I think music was really important or fun in the movies. I think he'd handle that really well. I mean, just look at the films he's made, like with Baby Driver or even Scott Pilgrim. He handles teenage characters well, can make it fun and entertaining. So I think Edgar Wright would do good.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool one.
I don't know. Maybe someone like James Gunn, who can really handle, that real scientific action.
He's got good writing too. Yeah,
but exactly right. Knows how to infuse characters and heart and all that. Someone like that, or Taika Waititi, who does that very well as well. I don't know. Yeah, but Steven Spielberg needs to be involved. You have to have Spielberg in there somehow.
Yeah, those are good picks, man. Now I'm like, no, I really want to see him move.
Taika would even be a fun Doc Brown, I think.
Oh, yeah.
He's loony enough.
Yeah, for sure.
And then for our last comment, just a recommendation. 2 great time travel shows, Timeless and 7 Days. Both fantastic and highly recommend them.
Never heard of those all. Add those to the list.
I'll check them out.
So, now we got new time travel show recommendations to check out. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. This has been such a fun conversation. I hope you come back and join me again soon in the future.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yes.
And thank you to everyone who watched, and we will see you next time. Bye.